All right. I think we are live. Buff Nation, what is going on? Hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. And hey, got some great news. Colorado is still going to be on plenty of primetime games, I think, this season. So, opening up against North Dakota State on primetime. I forget who's carrying the game, but that's going to be on Thursday night, week 1. And then for week 2, I believe it's September 7th, we have now the Buff's going to be on NBC. This is really exciting stuff. I can't even remember the last time we've been on NBC, let alone an NBC primetime game, going up against the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So today, going to talk a little bit about that. Going to give you guys a little bit of a bird's eye view from about some of their additions over at Nebraska, guys to keep an eye out for going into this matchup, because much like ourselves, they are a different team than what we saw last year. So really exciting stuff. I'm glad that we're continuing this rivalry in this way. You can tell that it's going to be high in demand because these rebuilds with Matt Rhule and Coach Prime, they've started at the same time. I feel like they're always going to be compared, and they're going about how they're rebuilding very differently. And I think that's what makes this whole thing even that much more interesting and enticing for the country to watch. So, hey, y'all be sure to check in. Hope you guys are doing well. Shirley, good to see you. Mike, good to see you as well. This is going to be a lot of fun, no doubt. And I still have to get Cameron Parker on the show to give me a more in-depth preview of Nebraska. He was at the spring game just a couple weeks ago. But hey, let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure, Mike, you have some thoughts on some of these players as well. But let's go ahead and just get into a quick preview of Nebraska. And I will say this, guys, I guess before I go through, talk about some of their recruits. Over under, from what I've seen for Nebraska, 7.5 wins. The expectation is a bowl game. No doubt. They were so close last year. If they just had half decent quarterback play, they probably get there. Okay. Colorado's over under right now is 4.5. My expectation and my hope is bowl game and more wins than that. Right. But we'll just have to see. Going to be very interesting to see how Colorado plays going into a very crazy environment out there in Lincoln. So let's go ahead, and now I will bring this back up. Here we go. Which one do I want to do? Yeah, we'll go right here. Hopefully this will be cool. All right. So, of course, the biggest difference that you'll see on the team is 5-star quarterback, 5-star plus Dylan Rhule from Georgia. I believe he was at some different high schools before that, but of course his uncle coaches the offensive line there. He got a nice pay bump right before his flip happened from Georgia to Nebraska, but he's going to be, in my opinion, my expectation, he's going to be that week 1 starter as a true freshman. And what I'm hoping for is that we can catch him while he's still getting up to speed with the college game, because he's a very talented quarterback. Nebraska's going to be very well off with him at the helm for the next 3-4 years. And yeah, we're hoping that, hey, this is going to be his first big time college football game. And hopefully we can throw some things at him defensively that kind of throw him off his game a little bit. But they're going to still be relying on the run game quite a bit. This is one thing that's also really interesting, is that similar to last year as well, I think Colorado and Nebraska were right around each other with overall recruiting ranking for 2023 as well. They're 23rd overall this year. I think we're 22nd. But the strategy and the methodology, the philosophy that we've had, or both schools have had, has been strikingly different. So we can take a look here. You see they haven't put as much emphasis on transfers. They're really hitting the high school recruiting very hard. And you see they already have 16 enrollees, and they got 15 more guys coming. So that's 31 guys they're bringing in this year from the high school class. That's awesome. That's awesome stuff, and a lot of very talented players from all over the country, including, Landon Davidson out here, interior lineman right out here in my backyard in Broomfield, Colorado. It's interesting stuff. But what I'm wanting to highlight for you guys in today's video is just their main transfers that I've taken a look at. These are guys that should be making an impact on the Cornhuskers team this year. I would imagine that all three of these guys are going to be starters. At least our lads, their website had these guys penciled in as starters, projected starters for Nebraska. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. First off, we're starting off with edge / linebacker, Stefan Thompson. This is somebody that is going to be probably lining up in addition to those big boys that they have in the interior defensive line. You guys probably remember them, number 9, Ty Robinson, and number 0, Nash Hutchmacher, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But coming over here from Syracuse, I think he's got one more year of eligibility, but you can see graded out very well, played 418 snaps, part-time player, but I think he could project, if he's not playing part-time snaps, he would be a starter here in Nebraska. 58 total tackles, a sack, and graded out pretty well in coverage too. Nice size guy, 6'1", 248 pounds. And yeah, coming over here with almost 1,500 snaps played in his career so far. So he's going to be somebody that Jordan Seaton, Khalil Benson, Pat Shermer, we're going to have to account for in pass protection, no doubt. And if we're going to have an opportunity to win this game, this is not rocket science. We have to protect Shedeur Sanders. And I would imagine they're going to do a lot less rush 3, drop 8 back like we saw last year. I would imagine they're going to be bringing 4 or 5 guys much more often with our offensive line play throughout the majority of last year. That's what really gave us trouble. So he's somebody to keep an eye on. Stefan Thompson, transfer out of Syracuse. Now, they've added a guard. I believe he'll be slotting in at the right guard spot. This is Micah Mazuk. Mazukua? Mazukua? 6'5", 337 pounds. Good Lord. This guy is big, okay? Started last year at Florida. Probably started last year. Yeah, it looks like he started for Baylor as well for 700 snaps and graded out pretty well in the run blocking, pass blocking in the SEC. These are definitely decent grades to have. Did give up 3 sacks and 14 total pressures. So maybe there's an opportunity, that we can have with some of the interior pass rushers that we brought in this class. But this is a big guy that is not going to be facing SEC talent, caliber talent very often at Nebraska. Might have a few different matchups in the Big Ten that kind of feel that way. But for the most part, I think he's going to be making a good adjustment here from starting in the SEC to now starting at Nebraska in the Big Ten, facing some teams like UTEP and Colorado. Probably going to feel a little bit better for him, right? Instead of going after Alabama and Georgia and Auburn, all those schools, right? So this is another starter that they brought in. Only 6 transfers, I think they brought in, if I remember correctly. But this is somebody that I think has a really good chance to start for them, someone to keep your eyes on. And then offensively, Dylan Raiola, he needs weapons. And I think from what I've seen and remember, their wide receiver core might be a little inexperienced. If you guys forget, we were in a recruiting battle during Coach Prime's first month here for athlete Malachi Coleman, wide receiver / cornerback out of Lincoln. Actually, I believe he's from Lincoln. Ended up sticking with the Cornhuskers and staying at that wide receiver position from what I've seen. He's going to be somebody that probably gets some snaps, but I don't know if he's going to end up starting. They did bring in Isaiah Nayor from Texas, who was more so a depth piece for them at receiver. But the big weapon that they brought in here is Jamal Banks from Wake Forest, 6'4", 205 pounds. Hey, look at this. 59 receptions for 653 yards, 4 touchdowns. Yeah, I think he's going to kind of be that traditional X wide receiver one type of weapon for Dylan Rhule. So that's going to be he's going to be somebody to keep your eyes on as well of this new look Nebraska Cornhuskers team. Hasn't gotten a ton of time, but over the last few years, you've seen him kind of move into a more prominent role as he's approaching the end of his college career. I would assume that this is somebody that Nebraska fans are very excited about and very happy to have on the team, an experienced wide receiver with a big frame, big target for Dylan Rhule to hit. So again, the biggest addition though, when you look at, let me pull up their depth chart here. Give me a second. And I'm sure, because I've looked at Colorado's too, and there's some things like wrong with it. So I assume that there are some things here that might not be, Nebraska fans that follow this might see like, no, we actually got this guy starting over that guy. But you can see a lot of continuity from the team. They have a lot of returners, and the guys that are coming in should be filling out the starting lineup, adding a little bit more talent there. You can see Stefan Thompson, Micah Mazuk, as well as Jamal Banks, Isaiah Noir, all those guys, those transfers projected to start. And then, of course, Dylan Rhule being a true freshman. It's going to be interesting to see how he comes out the gate. Sometimes it can take freshmen, no matter what position you're playing at, a little while to get comfortable. And so, it's never ideal to go into Nebraska and play, even though we have, I think at least a couple straight wins in Lincoln, if I remember correctly. Could be wrong on that, but I know it's been a long time since Nebraska's beaten us. But I think Colorado has a decent shot having this game early in the season as compared to, I know college football doesn't have out of conference games happen at the end of the year, but if this were to be an end of the season type of game, I would be probably a little bit more nervous about it. But I think that this is going to be a much closer game than it was week 2 of this past year. I think Nebraska is an improved team, just like we are, but they're going to be playing at home, and they also have a true freshman quarterback. So we're going to have to just see how all that works out. But this was kind of fun to compare and contrast guys as well. You can kind of see their roster here. A lot of continuity, a lot of guys coming in. And I think, again, Matt Rhule's a really good football coach. Nebraska fans just need to be patient with him. And I think that he is getting Nebraska on the right track. Let's just hope other people involved in the program don't meddle too much, right? But we can take a look here, and we can see the philosophy is just so different, right? We've brought in a lot more transfers. Again, they had 6 transfers, Nebraska. We brought in, 11 high school guys, 10 high school guys. So it's like everything is flipped, which is pretty interesting. Again, it's really fun to compare how these different approaches are going. But you can see here, I mean, we needed to make big time changes at the offensive line. Yakiri Walker, I don't think is going to be starting for us. Hank Zelenskis will be. We'll see who else slots in here on the offensive line. Not all the transfers are put on this depth chart. It needs to be updated a little bit. Of course, Rashad Amos isn't on this running back depth chart either. But just look at this as like a visual representation. You guys can kind of see of how much turnover there is, where we're bringing in new guys, all of that. It should be a lot of fun to follow. So I'm really happy that this game is on primetime. It's on NBC, and I'm glad that it's on a really good kickoff time. It's not 9:30, 10:30 Eastern, anything like that. We're getting 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on that Saturday, 5:30. Oh, yes, you'll still have a little bit of an evening left after the game's over. Isn't that wonderful? So this is going to be a lot of fun. I think, again, one thing that I'm looking most forward about this team is going into an environment like Lincoln and seeing how they perform. This is going to feel very similar to going into Oregon and at Autzen. Now, is Nebraska as talented as Oregon was last year? I don't think so. but it's going to be a very tough environment to play in, and I very much look forward to seeing how our Buffs handle that type of environment. Can they play much more composed than they played on the road during some of our games last year? That's going to be very interesting to watch, and my hope is that they will. And my hope is that they play in a way in which, they're able to keep time of possession, right? That's going to be very important to keep, get up to a lead early, keep time of possession, and try and take the crowd out of it. Yeah. So I'll get to a few of the comments. Oh, interesting. So Mike is saying, I think they'll start the QB that won the 5 games later. He got way better in passing, dual threat. Okay, is that very interesting? That would be, you're talking about Heinrich Harburg, correct? I think we might have saw him a little bit at the end of our matchup last year together. We'll see how week 1 goes. And maybe that's true. Maybe you guys have a better chance, getting those wins on the board early if you're just playing with a more experienced quarterback to start out with, sprinkling Rhule in throughout those games and then having him fully take over later in the year. College football coaches manage these types of transitions a lot differently than you'll see in the NFL, right? I think I remember too, was it Urban Meyer? And I don't know if it was his first year with the Gators or anything like that, but Tim Tebow's first year as a true freshman, they kind of brought him in certain packages in the red zone and whatnot. But Chris Leak was that main guy that first year. The new quarterback coach Nebraska was from the Steelers, is making progress with the quarterback room. Interesting. Okay. Boom shakalaka. Appreciate the love. And, where did I get the hat from? My friend Yo Martez. Good friend of mine out in Abilene, Texas. YoMartez.com. We used to do like a little promo code for it, but it didn't really do that well. But I love all his stuff. He always gives me good stuff to wear on here. YoMartez.com. He was my barber when I lived in Texas. If you guys didn't know this, I lived in Texas for 7 years. And I think he should have some more hats in stock. Yeah, here we go. Quality goods. But yeah, Martez is a good friend of mine. Would appreciate 10% off with your first buy as well. So that's always nice. But yeah, I love you, Martez, and I love wearing my friends' merch. It's awesome stuff. Nebraska hasn't liked a coach like Rhule since Bo. Yes. And he could turn out to be much better. Dev, good to see ya. Chairman A coming in here saying we can't let them have the last win, David. We must win no matter what. Man, again, this game is so important. It's the most important game on the year. I don't care what any of y'all say about the Big 12, about Kansas State, any of that. No, this is the biggest game of the year. That's why, even though we only won, how many games we won last year? See, I already forgot. 4 games. Oh, man. It was important we got the win against Nebraska. It just makes, in hindsight, it just makes the season look and feel so much better in some sort of capacity. Regardless of what happened, we won that matchup, okay? It means a lot. Reverend BJ Nelson, appreciate the love. Thank you so much for the $2 super sticker. Way to start my Monday on a high. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He does a lot of cool stuff, releases new pieces seasonally, like every quarter. So be sure to give him a follow on Instagram as well. Yo Martez. Mike says Colorado needs to watch out for turnovers. They have been focused on that the hardest. Secondary is weak. Okay, so this is one thing that I was wondering is about the secondary, because I mean they were dropping 8 back last game, and they couldn't stick with us. Now Nebraska also wasn't putting a lot of pressure on us. Again, rushing 3, and Shador, even when they were getting pressure, was running around doing his whole thing, right? I think the game plan is going to look much different in terms of what Nebraska is going to try to do defensively. But, you could argue that we have even more talent this year at the wide receiver position. And it's all going to come down to, are we going to be giving Shador enough time? It's also going to be helpful to establish a run game. Oh God, please, can we do it this year? Can we establish a little bit of a run presence to take some pressure off the passing game? What kept us in this game, y'all forget that first half was very competitive and close, because Nebraska would drive down the football field. They'd drive down the field and then they'd turn it over at midfield. Jeff Sims played terrible, was turning the ball over like crazy. And then in the second half, I mean, that's just when it took the air out of them. The altitude hit, all that. We were scoring a bunch of points on them. And yeah, I mean, none of this is rocket science stuff. We won the turnover battle, and we won convincingly, I think, because of that. The time and possession was in our favor, even though we weren't able to establish a big run game. So, yeah, I think both teams, you're going to see them play a little bit different than what we saw last year. And I do think, though, that Nebraska's weakness, I was just talking with a friend about this maybe like a half hour ago, so that I feel like we're going to have to attack their secondary, test their secondary. And that's interesting to note that you are kind of saying the same thing. We'll just need to see. General D saying Nebraska starts out 4 straight games at home. Oh, wow. That's very interesting. I know they have their week 1 matchup against a UTEP. Of course, we have our game at home against North Dakota State the week prior. But what's also nice is that that's a Thursday night game. So we'll get a week plus off before we go into Nebraska and play them. So an extra day or 2 to recover. That's always nice going into a matchup like this, for sure. But maybe that's another thing that allows them to roll out Rhule a little bit quicker when you're starting off with 4 home games. It's really nice. Dears, sweet baby Jesus, Grant, see you a run game so Dave could be happy at the Nebraska game, right? And I'm not even asking for us to, have a huge rushing total or anything like that. I just need us to rush efficiently. And while it's so funny because I'm a little bit more worried about the tackle play this year than I am the guard play, the interior play. But let's just run that thing, man. Let's establish a running game that's running up the middle, sprinkle some outside runs, some play action off of that. Pat Shurmur, he's a competent offensive coordinator, okay? I don't think we're ever going to see Pat Shurmur just have a total crap game plan like we saw, from our staff last year. We got to run the ball at least a little bit. I really hope they do play Dylan. Our edge room is going to eat them. We'll just have to see, man. I do feel a lot better about this edge room than what we had last year. And I'm working on it's not a perfect comparison, but to just show you guys like where we graded out as a team last year with our defense and front seven, and kind of how everybody else that we brought in, they've performed in comparison to that. So I do think that we have improved. We're just going to have to see how much, and it should be interesting. So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I appreciate you guys coming in. I'll be back today or tomorrow. We'll see what other Buffs news that we get, but appreciate you guys checking in. Shout out again to Reverend BJ Nelson for the $2 super chat. Shout out to Mike, our consistent Nebraska fan, being in the chat. This is something that's going to be a lot of fun, and this rivalry is what makes college football so much fun. So y'all let me know your thoughts in the comments on the replay. Smash that like and subscribe on the way out. Go Buffs.